Welcome back to the Two Promises podcast. Let's dive right into another exciting adventure with BD and crew as he pursues his new passion of one day finding the most epic bourbon. The Two Promises team send their special thanks to Hobie and the Huckleberries for their masterful theme music. So grab a glass, relax, and enjoy responsibly.
Baby says she's leaving if I don't stop drinking wine. So I switched to whiskey, now I'm feeling fine. Drinking that smooth whiskey. No more wine. I like straight bourbon. Baby, you try the ride.
So you have endured a lot. You have overcome so many struggles. You self-taught yourself just how to read, how to write. In many ways, those were also caused you to be a target growing up. But you didn't just go through those things and survive. You also said, no, I'm going to go bigger. I'm going to make this world a better place. I'm going to do what I can. So from someone with had to fight their way through an education, didn't go to traditional high school, had to get a GED just to have an equivalency. And then now you're an author, you have college experience, college education, and you're going into a very difficult degree field that involves a lot of study, a lot of research, and you have fought through so many things, and you're doing a lot of things to make the world a better place, to improve other people, to help others get better. But even it wasn't like, okay, you got freed from your high school age and your teenage years. Now all of a sudden you can live whatever it was that you maybe had envisioned. You kind of found yourself trapped in some of the same cycles that you lived growing up. Would you mind telling us a little bit about that transition and how maybe your childhood might have affected or impacted you moving into adulthood?
Yes, absolutely. So when I was about 19 years old, I had moved from my childhood home after my mother's passing from cancer. And I ended up being taken in by this ministry couple. And I write a few chapters about them in the book. And they had presented themselves as being the loving parents that I never had. And they knew that I was desperate for love and acceptance. And unfortunately, they pulled me into this almost cult like nightmare where they invited me into their home, but the wife would threaten to hit me if she were upset. In fact, she did hit me at one point and left a hand mark on me. Really, it was like I was almost reliving an abusive childhood because I was brought into this environment under the guise of loving, godly parents that I never had. And soon things just take this darker turn where the wife hit me because I accidentally stubbed my toe and uttered a curse word, or she threatened to hit me if she were upset about something. And they also had very creepy behaviors where they want me to tell them if I masturbated. They want to ask about the length of my pubic hair. They really, in hindsight, I see how creepy and horrific that whole situation was. And then leading out of that, it felt like I was subconsciously so used to these dark patterns that I fell in line with dark patterns of toxicity and abuse throughout my childhood. And I had to become self aware to realize, oh, I am subconsciously putting myself in dark situations. That's why I survived being kidnapped several times as a young adult. And then that leads into where I meet the man who really changed my life in the most unpleasant way possible. And that is where we talk about where I met the person we refer to as Jake in the book. And that is the man who really seems, in hindsight, to be my mother reincarnated. Just so much of those similar abusive patterns.
Right. So you found yourself in these very abusive, troubling, awful scenarios. I remember, just to kind of tie it back in some more, is your brother beating your other brother, the pool of blood that you had to clean up, and they didn't take him immediately to the hospital.
So my mother and I got him out of the house after the beating, and we ended up going to a motel. And I think it was pretty horrific that he was not taken immediately to a hospital. My mother leaves her 3 children, the 2 boys who tried to kill him, and my sister at the home, and takes my oldest brother, the victim in this case, and myself to a motel in Reno. And I remember that being so horrific. He was just crying. He had lost so much blood and he was so cold in the motel that he asked my mother to crawl in bed with him because he had lost that much blood. And it was such a horrific thing, and that she waited a day to take him to the hospital. And I think in hindsight, she always had this fear that CPS was going to be called again because it had been called several times. And she had just slipped through the cracks and she feared having her children taken away. However, yet she did really nothing to provide a loving, safe environment for them. The horrific that absolutely Trevor and Mitch should have been charged. They absolutely should have been charged, and they didn't. And things got worse. And then our family dog gets murdered by Trevor. And it's these things that I think any normal, rational mother would have said, okay, these boys are a danger. They need to be out of the house immediately. Charges need to be filed. But she didn't. And Joshua did not file charges against them. And it was to protect them because they were still youth. But it really wasn't okay. Charges should have been filed when I was 10 years old and he overpowered me and choked me until my lips lost color. Charges should have been filed when I was a little girl and he threatened to slit my throat with a rusty knife.
Absolutely.
Charges should have been filed when he got aroused by cutting off a head of a live animal. But again and again, there was that failure to protect, and it was all around. And Joshua faced that as he was not a good person, but he faced that also, that lack of protection when she waited a whole day before taking him to the hospital.
Yep. Now that you're bringing those details back around, it's coming back to me. They did wait a long time to get him to the hospital. They finally did. And the way that fear and complex PTSD can manifest itself and can affect our behaviors is astounding. We are not ourselves whenever we are living in complex PTSD in those environments that shape it. And then even after we get out of them, we're still very much affected by that. And there's broken people everywhere. There's people who have endured things like yourself that a lot of times we don't always see, we don't always know. And that affects them even into adulthood. And here you are, you're working through things, you got your part-time job at the library, you're trying to get some of your own autonomy
Mhm.
and be your individual person and grow and mature as a human and as an adult. And then you find yourself into a world where you're seeking maybe some relationships and things
Mhm.
like that. And how does that transition in your world? How'd that go?
It's a great question, and that really circles back around to when I met the person that we refer to as Jake. I was at the store, and I had seen him in the store, and I lived at this point in a primarily white town, and to see someone so exotic looking, so handsome, like, at this point, I'm 21 years old, and I am just head over heels. I see this man who is drop dead gorgeous, and he starts to sing to me in the store and I head over heels. I see this Asian looking man with blue eyes. You know, he just looked like a fresh sip of water in this desert and I melted. And we end up becoming into a friendship that blossoms into a romantic relationship. And unfortunately, things go very dark with this individual. And I faced horrific abuse at his hands.
Yes, and I think that in some of these realms, like, you grew up with it in your family, that was the norm, even though it was wrong, it was terrible and appalling, and that is something that we seek to change and that we want to improve for the United States, for the world at large, and that's what we're working on. But then It almost sounds like this was a very out of left field experience, if you were. It was so unexpected. You had an understanding of who this person was. And then as you get to know them and as time goes on, all of a sudden you realize, oh no, he is not this person. Now it's a shock, a surprise, in a lot of ways, a betrayal. And you find yourself with someone who is very much like all of the people that you grew up with.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned before, it really seemed like he was my mother reincarnate. Truly, there were so many disturbing parallels. But with this person, he sensed and he knew that I had had a horrific childhood. And he knew that I was still essentially just a kid. I, at age 29 right now, I think of 21 still being childlike, especially since in some weird way I was so kept from the world for so many years. And he really manipulated that to his benefit. And it started off very slow with these red flags of controlling. It started off saying, nobody's going to love you like I do. Your whole family has let you down. No one will ever put in the effort into making your life better like I will. No one will care about you the way that I do. And saying these things, I believed it. Here I am, essentially this nerdy girl who has blossomed into looking a little bit more womanly. And now I'm getting this attention and hearing all of these things by this gorgeous man that I want to hear. Then things get even darker and darker, where he's controlling my outfits. He's controlling how I do my makeup. He's telling me to dye my hair black and my pubic hair black. He's controlling even those aspects of me. And then it gets worse, where he is now not letting me use the bathroom by myself. He is insisting that he goes into the bathroom with me every single time I have to use the restroom, and literally fighting himself. When he first tried to come into the bathroom with me to be in there while I'm in there, I said, no, no, thank you. And I try to close the door because he's getting forceful. And he says things to me because he's upset. He's mad. Like I'm fighting him about following me into the restroom because I want my privacy. So he digs at the most tender, sensitive scars of my past. And he says to me, you were molested as a little girl. You were molested by your mother. She put things inside of you and she damaged your little body. You're ruined now. And he's yelling this as I'm trying to shut the door in his face because I want my privacy. And he hits at that nerve. And eventually I just give in. I just collapse essentially. And I'm hit at like the most sensitive part of me to get his way. And that shows how he was just getting darker and darker. And as you read in the book, his abuse went so much more beyond that.
Yes, and absolutely. And I do remember that one of the major instances that you related that you were kidnapped, held against your will, was in a bathroom.
Yes. And that happened after the fact. So, with the first time that he had kidnapped me, it was when we were at his apartment on his parents' large property. He had his own apartment. And we're in the bathroom and he's playing his guitar. And I spoke while he was playing his guitar. He wanted to be a famous musician and all of these things, bragging about his albums. He had let out a couple little albums that didn't really do that well. And I talked while he was playing his guitar and he yells at me. And he's just being rude. And this was, I would say, earlier on in our dating. And I said, no, I'm going to leave. I'm not going to have someone speak this way to me. So I get up and I try to leave the bathroom. And he blocks himself in front of the door so I can't leave. And he pushes me down and he knocks me down. And he says, you stay here until I'm done with you. You don't leave until I say so. And I tried to get up and escape again. And he pushes me and he knocks me down. And he held me hostage in his bathroom for 30 minutes. And that was the first time he kidnapped me. And unfortunately, each time he kidnapped me, it got worse and worse.
Right. And so this kind of highlights on, I think, an important part of the healing cycle. And that is one, you have to feel safe. You have to feel safe in order to heal. You're not going to overcome the trauma unless you're in an environment where you have some safety. And then another big important piece to that is having your own personal boundaries, having your own self, your own identity, your own being that is separate from the abusers, the situation, whatever. And a lot of times that is contrary to anything the abuser wants. They want control, they want power, they want to be able to assert themselves into you and influence you the way that they want to. So, multiple times throughout your book, you have shared how you did try to work those boundaries, how you did try to defend yourself with the couple who took you in, and you tried to have boundaries with them, and they still abused you in a different way, in a more emotional, narcissistic way. And then you tried to have your boundaries with Jake. And one, I applaud you for standing up for yourself, for sticking up for yourself, for working on those things. For anyone who's listening who might be going through some of these same scenarios, who might be finding themselves in cycles of abuse, those boundaries are strong, they're important, they're part of your healing process. So I would really love to hear you share some, Cheyenne, on how you developed them, how you asserted yourself, and how that interplayed in your experience.
Yes. So I learned to develop boundaries after years, as you've mentioned, of different scenarios where people continually violated my boundaries, especially Jake. In the book, it talks about in a lot of detail of how he continually violated those boundaries. I learned the sanctity of my own energy and my own body. And I learned that it really is a privilege to be in my space, to be around me. And that is not coming from a place of being stuck up or thinking that I'm holier than thou. It's that we all, as humans, we all have this sacred energy within us and around us. And once you realize that you can choose who you allow in, and choose how close you let people get in. You can have these gates around your temple, which is your body, your mind, your soul, all of these things. That really took years to establish. And it's something that I still have to apply and actively practice for my own sanity. Yes, as you've read in my book, there have been numerous occasions where I've survived several horrific kidnappings. Of course, my boundaries have been infringed upon. My basic human rights were infringed upon and stripped from me during these kidnappings. So I really had to give myself the gift of learning boundaries and applying those daily.
Yes. And kudos to you for, I mean, it's not easy. Those are hard fought wins, but you did it, you fought through it, and you have now become a very incredible, powerful woman in your own right. So we'll move a little bit more into how this kind of drama unfolds. So now you have this blossoming romance, but you're already seeing the red flags. You're already noticing, oh my goodness, this is my mom reincarnated. I am finding myself in the exact same situation that I tried to free myself from. And now this tall glass of water, this beautiful, gorgeous man is now the object of what I want and what I desire. But at the same time, it's also a mirror and a reflection of everything that I'm trying to escape. So you were caught in a little bit of a,
Yeah, I was. At the time, I didn't realize that he was my mother reincarnate. I knew that it was an awful situation. And I also knew that I felt like, at any rate, that he was the only one who loved me. Because, as mentioned, he knew I had a horrific childhood. He knew everything about me. And he used that against me to say the things of, oh, I love you. No one will love you the way I do. Words of that to that effect. So I was pulled in, pushed out, and pulled back in where he would surprise me with gifts. And then he would get angry and he would destroy those gifts, say that he loved me and all of these things, and then completely tear me down. It was really a push and pull. So disturbingly, where he even used psychological warfare and had his friend essentially post these awful things about me all over Facebook because he wrongfully accused me of stealing money from him.
yep,
And later on, he admits, oh, no, actually, that didn't happen. But by then, my photo had been plastered all around Facebook in a small town
right.
with lies about me. So there were these aspects, and it did unfold even more so. I cannot recall the amount of times that this man did horrifically abusive things to me, but I can recall a time specifically where he got upset with me and he tried to light my hair on fire. And he chased me around the room trying to light my hair on fire. It wasn't just locking me in the bathroom for 30 minutes. It was secretly watching me while I showered. I caught him one day watching me while I showered. He peeked through the door. It was secretly recording me while I slept. And I actually discovered while he was going through his photos on his phone, showing me something. I said, "Babe, what's that?" He clicked on it. He said, "Oh, you just look so, peaceful and sexy while you slept. So I recorded you." And he had recordings of me sleeping. It was flicking cigarette ash into my face. It was kidnapping me. It was threatening me with a weapon. It was kidnapping me and doing horrific things to me. It was all of these awful situations that really did unfold. And I am blessed that I survived all of these horrific things. And that's one of the reasons why I use my voice is because of what I've survived and endured. And to also highlight these patterns of abuse and how they can pour out into other facets of your life. Because if I had been a healed woman, I would never have even given a second glance to somebody who mistreated me. I would have left after the first red flag. I wouldn't have stayed until he did horrifically unspeakable things to me.
Right. And I think that's a lot of ways that people find themselves trapped and they find themselves in cycles of abuse, even if the names of the actors change, even if the circumstances change, the underlying problems that people like project onto others and the way people, predators, will isolate the victim. They will use everything in their power to psychologically take their power away. And a lot of times it was knowing those triggers, knowing your past and weaponizing it against you and using those words that would cause you to, I mean, at the end of the day, we're kind of animals. You know what I mean? Like, yes, we're human. We have this brain up here, but we also have this nervous system that is designed to fight, flight, posture, submit. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And if someone who knows these things, and whether it's because they were conditioned on how to use them, even if they don't mentally know them, they were conditioned on how to use these techniques and these things. And so now they're putting you into freeze mode, into submit mode, because maybe that's how they were raised. Maybe that's what they experienced. And now they are just doing what they learned and what they knew. And they've isolated you. They've found their target. And now they can use what they do to control you and to get whatever expression is that they want. And that dichotomy of power and control and using the nervous system against you, which kind of makes me think a little bit about I'm probably past the trend. I'm like, I'm not the person that's on like the viral stuff or whatever, but there's a debate online about a man or a bear.
Mhm.
Would a woman rather encounter a bear in the wild or a man in the wild? So just kind of wanted to spin it your way and get your input on that question.
That is a great question. And I think my answer might be a little surprising. I'm a very literal woman. So, despite the fact that I have been kidnapped by two different men, I have been raped by multiple men, and I have faced horrific encounters. Logically speaking, I would choose the man because a bear could probably eat me. And a man, at least now, I think I could hold my own if I'm. So we have to look at the logical aspect of it. What is the percentage that a man in the woods would attack me? Despite my whole encounters with men who have done horrific things to me, I take responsibility, at least somewhat, to know I put myself in those dangerous positions. So the percentage of a man being in the woods trying to harm me, I would like to say is fairly low to 50-50. Now, if he did try to harm me, I'm pretty confident that I could at least claw out his eyes and somewhat survive.
You believe that even with the man that you've got the better chance and somewhat survive. Is that what I heard there?
Essentially, yes, because with a bear, the likelihood I really would rather not have my face eaten off. With a man, despite my history of having horrific encounters with men, I know that most likely he would not be a predator, but if he was, then I'm pretty confident that I could hold my own and claw out his eyes and escape.
Still survive. You're still surviving. Like with the bear, hey, you might be in the belly.
Yes. And then
Gotcha.
out of the belly, which would be no fun.
Yes. Yeah. No, nobody needs that. So that's a great perspective. Thank you for sharing it with us. I think that all of your reasoning there like makes a lot of sense. And kind of caveating with that is essentially, I said this before, and I'm not trying to like diminish things, but at least a base level, a lot of us are just animals on that conditioned response. And once we get driven into those areas, we are not acting with these mental faculties and with the brain and the logic that we've been given. We are triggered and we are forced into, some people call it like the reptilian brain, or, you know what I mean, your lizard
Yeah.
brain or something like that, where it is literally just in survival mode. And my experiences with complex PTSD showed me that in very real ways, in how my behaviors, my actions, the things that I would do, and the person that I became was not me, was not human, was not the real person that I am. But it took work, both on my part and through a team of medical professionals that helped me heal and helped me get better and helped me find the human aspects of myself so that I could, in turn, be the person that I was before. And of course, there's been change, but be more myself with all this new experience and all this now new desire and drive to help other people who are kind of at the mercy of their nervous system without the tools.
That's a great, great point that you made. How much the nervous system has a role in this. And I feel like that's something that really needs to be highlighted. The whole connection between mind, body, and spirit, I absolutely believe in. And in hindsight, I can see, oh, when nervous system is dysregulated, when you subconsciously hang on to patterns that you're used to, you subconsciously walk into dangerous situations, like in my case. And as mentioned, I'm so grateful that I miraculously survived several kidnappings at the hands of different men, the main one being Jake.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us today on this curious roller coaster of life. If this is your stop, please exit peacefully. Enjoy the rest of your day. If you're ready for another one, just push play. Just a final note before you go, thank you, and thank you for feeling. The distillation and aging process is different for everyone. I'm not quite sure what you're ready for. Sip slowly and enjoy responsibly.
Baby says she's leaving if I don't stop drinking wine. So I switched to whiskey, now I'm feeling fine. Drinking that smooth, smooth whiskey. No more wine. I like straight